All right, welcome back. Okay, I was showing this box to some folks, and who are subscribers, and they asked me they thought maybe I ought to show it to you completely finished. So there it is. The one this is the one we used the blotch control on to solidify the wood. Actually, I got to thinking about it and played a little bit with some other stuff, and I think, well, actually I know, if I actually change my formula some and up the amount of acrylics and the type of acrylic, it does real nice in solidifying punky wood. I mean, even on the bottom, when we put the screws in, sound as $1. That's not too sound. It was sound. So anyway, there she be. So that's using the spalted and the walnut. Now, kind of the other reason I'm showing it to you is I've got a little bit more spalted here. It wasn't quite as bad as this, but sure gives you an option. Now, it was funny. This past week we had a router class in here, and we were doing rails and stiles with router bits, and the cope and stick type thing. And so fortunately for me, in my router table, I'm able to set both bits up, and so they're doing their thing and making doors and whatever and getting everything lined up. And so I went and grabbed 2 pieces of popper, and I said, well, let me show you something. I said, I've done it forever, and everybody really liked it, and they said I'd never showed it, they'd never seen it. So I thought, well, maybe I ought to show it to you. So let me show you what I do. I think you probably already got it. If you've got, and this just happens to be whatever, it's an OG profile, what you're going to do is just, where you would normally run your groove, okay? Now, the router bit's in the table like this, okay, so the difference is, rather than running your piece flat, you have a fence on it, and you run the piece vertical. Then, with your other bit, you're going to run it flat. Now, I know they make lock miters and all of these different things, and it works on the exact same principle, but I know guys tell me, they like the lock miters. I've had fits getting them in line. I'm not a fan, I'm sorry. But anyway, so, this is in the table, okay, and you run it, and so this is cutting your profile, and, which I got the wrong bit, sorry. And this is cutting your profile, and then you're of course, cutting the reverse profile. Wait a minute, I still ain't got it right. This is in the table. Yeah, this is like this. No, it ain't. I'll get it right in a minute. How to do it. Yeah, that's right. This is in the table. This cuts the profile. There we go. And this one's flat. Then we cut the other profile vertical. And all it does is it creates, well, it's just like the thing with the door. It creates a tenon, actually 2 of them, and it dramatically increases your glue area. But the other thing it does is it makes alignment, like if you're doing a face frame to a case. It makes a really nice joint. And it's going to line up, assuming you've got your bit set right, it's going to line up just perfect. So there you go. Using your And I mean, this is, like I said, this is an OG profile, but you could use any profile you got. I mean, it's just, you know, does a nice job. Okay, one of the things I'm gonna do, kind of start doing, I don't do a lot of this, but as you probably know, I get asked a lot of times to try out and test things and whatever. So, I don't know if many of you ever do any power carving, but there's a company called Kutzall. And Kutzall makes like the Holy Galahads and the carbide grinding disc and these carbide burrs that you use in power carving and whatever. And so now they've came out with some rasp, and they sent them to me to test out. And I was playing with them, and can you get a close-up of the surface of this? It's just like, you know, it looks like millions of little carbide grit, if you will, is attached to it. And again, I've used that Holy Galahad and their grinding disc, and I've used the burrs for years. And I mean, they last, they hold up. And I tell you what else too, if you get them clogged up real bad, again, I'm gonna go back. I told y'all Jason, AKA Pitbull, is the one that introduced me to the crud cutter. Clean it with some crud cutter, works like a champ, cleaning a file or rasp. But in any case, these things really, really did well. I think Woodcraft's going to be carrying them, but they're not out just yet. But really nice, different grits. Got the little pointed profile one. Didn't see a round one. I'm gonna ask them about that. I like to see a round one, but they did really well. The other one is a new. I'm gonna tell y'all something you probably don't know. I like routers a lot. I know that's news to most of you, but anyway, forever I've ran the Portacable 7518, is that 3¼ horse router motor in my lifts. But a company called Portamate. Now, Portamate's kind of known for their, you know, making benches, kind of stands and whatever for like chop saws and all of that stuff. And but they've came out with a 3¼ horsepower motor. Now, one of the things, and I was reading in it, the company's out of Michigan or something. I don't know where this is made, probably overseas, most everything is. But it's a 3¼ variable speed. Now it's in the router table now, so you can't really see it. But during the router, I received it during the router class, and we put it in, and we kind of put it through its paces. One of the things that I did, I turned the speed way down, and I took a large raised panel bit, and I was running it and taking pretty heavy cuts. That usually will bog a router down. It didn't this one. It just plowed right on through. It was pretty impressive. Then of course we just went on routing with it and left it in the table. And today when we do some routing, it's in the table. It was pretty quiet, very smooth. I mean, the only thing that's yet to be determined on it is longevity. I mean, the difference is that I think, if memory serves me right, it's about $70 less than the 7518. And it worked out really nice. It's proven to be a really nice unit. But again, the longevity of it, I'm not sure. I thought I'd show you these. it was funny when you put it in. Everybody's used the Porter cable wrenches. Well, these have got an offset, and they work with a Porter cable as well. And you got the rubber coated handles and all. They made changing bits above the table really nice. So I mean, it appeared to be really well made. So I just wanted to let you know about it. Now, the guys at Woodcraft told me they wouldn't have this, I think it's the beginning of October. So, you know, if you have an interest, we'll keep running it and see how it does. Now, it's got a 1/2 and a 1/4 inch collet, and no issues. Did good. Okay. Is that all my junk? Is that all my intro stuff? I think so. I think I got all that out of the way. All right, I'm gonna get rid of this stuff, and we're gonna come back. And one of the things, the router class, and this has to do with setting up a dovetail jig. And I mean, we've done it a dozen times, but I'm gonna go over it just a little more, just to make sure that you understand. Because pretty much any jig you got, I think what we're going to show you will help. And then we're also going to answer the ultimate dovetail question: tails or pins first? I think we have the answer. I think. Okay, we'll be right back. All right. Now, again, I haven't dealt with all the jigs out there, and one of the things we did on ours is that we tried to put these alignment guides. It didn't work out. So what I want to make sure you understand, and again, it works on most of the jigs, is if you think about it in the terms of a hand-cut dovetail. Now, a hand-cut dovetail, you're going to go through and you're going to lay out your dovetails, and then you're going to saw them. The only difference that we have here is that we're using a router to remove the material. That's the biggest difference. Now, I've got some green tape on this, and this is walnut. I've got the green tape on here just so you can see it. And particularly when you're using a fixed pin jig, and that's what ours is. And there's a lot of them. I know Porter Cable's got some, Keller's got some. There's numerous ones out there. And then you've got the variable pinless, variable space. What I have found is if you cut the tails first, the tails then allow you to set up your pin jig. Let me explain. Let me show you. Now, the first thing is, obviously, as we talked about last week, with a fixed pin, if your board is wide enough, or that it fits where you've got, now I'm going to have a strong half pin. I don't know how well you can see this. I've got maybe 3/32 each side. So I've got a little bit more than a half pin. Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take a little piece of wood, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to mark to the other side. Now what's this doing? This allows me to make sure that I'm right spacing, to get my spacing correct. Understand? Now actually I used a big black line so you could see it, but I'm going to go get something that's a little bit more delicate, like a 5mm mechanical pencil. So I'll be right back. When I draw my line from either side, I'm right where I need to be. Now I want to set me up a stop block. Now if you're doing a run, whether you be doing boxes, whether you be doing drawers, whatever, when you can, particularly when you can keep everything the same size, then you can really move with them. The other thing you want to do is try to keep your material consistent in thickness. In this case, we're 3/4 of an inch. Now I need to set the depth. Now I always want to be able to have a little bit of room to sand. So I want my cut length to be just slightly below the line. So I can clean that up. I'm there. Now, as most of you know, one of the things with ours is we also have a pre-cut bit. And because we're using a thin neck, I'm too deep. Because we're using a thin neck, we use this to help remove most of the meat, or some of it, to give that bit some relief, and particularly the neck on it. The other thing we found in doing this is that it makes for a much cleaner, less chip out and tear out. Now this jig is set now. I can do all 4 cuts. Told you I got a pretty hefty half pin. Now the reason I'm doing that on this box is once this box is assembled and glued up, I'll take it and go around, flipping it through the table saw top and bottom, just enough to shave it, just to make sure everything's clean and clear. And if there's at least a little bit of issue with the setting level or whatever, I can take a hand plane. This just gives me a little bit of extra room to make sure everything's working right. But now comes the part before we're going to set the jig up. Now the thing you need to understand, the tail jig, which we just used, it doesn't matter. Even if you're using a variable space, you can put it wherever you want. Okay, it doesn't have to adjust forwards and backwards, because all you're doing is cutting that slot. That's it. The key is in the pin jig, and that's what we're going to look at. I'm looking to make sure I've got everything going the way I want to go. That's my face and that's my top. Now what I want to do we always want the wide part of the pin, of course, is the inside. So now let me get some tape on here, because this is the one you're going to really need to see. I don't want anything hanging over the end to affect my alignment. So make sure that's off. Now when I mark this, now I want to show you this too. I really didn't need the tape on this one. Is the difference a pre-cut bit makes. Yep, I mean we're pretty clean. But then again, this is just some kind of straight walnut, you know, there's nothing super hard here. We get into some of these crotches, that's a little different. Now all I'm going to do now is line everything up. I might have these mixed up. I'll be right back. I think I was sanding all my panels and I think I got the wrong panels in the wrong place. I do. My mistake. I'll be right back. All right, I got everything sorted out. Now what I've done is, as you can see, I've laid it across laid my tails across what will be my pin border, the end. And I marked them. Now what I used was a knife. See that real close?
There you go.
Now, this is where folks get a little bit confused. They have a hard time getting the pin right. All you have to do is clamp it onto your piece. And using your layout lines, in other words, where you've drawn your dovetails, all you have to do is simply line your pins up and move the pin jig fore and aft until it lines up. Now you can see right there I'm showing you a line. You can see that line is to the left or right, whichever it is. So if I'm not, remember something, when I do this, that line is on the inside of the tail. So I want to make sure that I take the line. No, let me rephrase it. I leave the line, if at all possible. And that's why it's important I use a knife, because that's going to give me a really tight dovetail. So what I just showed you, where that line's to the left or whatever, but again, I can loosen these up and move it fore and aft to get the dovetail tight. I usually always have a scrap piece to try it on. But if you will do what I just showed you with a knife, you're going to find that you come out really, really close. I mean, usually it's right on the money. So you don't have all that fumbling around with. Then you're going to take your pattern cutting bit and cut the pins. Again, slightly below the line. Walnut can be hard to see. Monty, I know you're going to fuss at me because I didn't use that little wrench you gave me. It's over there. I just didn't go get it. Okay. They make a little key wrench that you can use for that. Now, one of the other things that I've showed you is that when I'm cutting my pins, I come in, go across, back, out. I draw a box going from left to right, coming back, over. That keeps the rotation of that bit going into the wood. That's going to give me less chip out than any other way. Now to understand that, if you look right, can we see this? Right here in the middle, it's kind of hard for you. There's a little piece sticking up. That's because I've drawn all the way around it. And I have to kind of back. So when you see me, when I'm done, I back in. I'm taking that little post out. We actually set this jig up in the in the router bit class, and it took us, well, it took maybe 10 minutes because we were explaining it. Everybody in the world wants green dovetails. Huh? Yeah, have fun with that. Crystal says y'all have fun with that. Again, here's the thing you got to think of. Because this pin jig is a wedge, okay, if you move back, you have less angle, so you're going to loosen the pin. If you move forward, you're going to tighten the pin. Now, the other thing that happens when I'm moving this, in this case, if I wanted it just a little looser, okay, what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll make a pencil mark. You can actually see right there's the pencil mark from the class. We can see it. I need it to loosen up a little bit. So what I did is I made a pencil mark and I moved back maybe a strong 32nd, snugged it back down, made a test cut. That was it. We got it. Okay, what I got to do now is I want to go ahead and dovetail a couple of these, or get this one dovetailed so it's kind of out of my hair. I don't want to jump around too much, and then I got to go back. Because one of the issues we've got is a lot of these boxes are kind of different widths and whatever. Because that's something I want you to see. Because a box is a box is a box. You know, last week we talked about that perfect, box, but depending upon your material, rare does that happen. So we just kind of improvise, and try to get a good looking size and go with it. And some of these, again, where we did this, where we're splitting that half pin on the end with no issue, that's the quickest, easiest way to do it. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we have to be able to move around. Now, this is where a variable pin jig would probably help, where you can space it out. But if you have a fixed pin jig, jig, whether it be ours or whoever, what I'm going to show you next, I think will help you, and we'll get them dovetailed. Let me show you what I got. I got a spalted one here. Now this ain't as spalted as that little pipe box was. This will make a pretty neat little box. Got a nice top for it. But the problem with this one, not that it's a problem, but I forget exactly what the measurement is on it. But on my jig, like I think I told you last week, a 9 1/4 ideally, and I'm like at 8. So what I would do on this, and I'm going to show you just in a second, is because I'm going to have to do it on this little walnut one, I'll cut a 1/2 pin and a 1/2 pin, then I'll come back and deal with the middle. This is one of those that at 8 inches, it's not quite as big as I like a chest, keeping chest to be, but it's going to work just fine. But the other thing is, with the spalted, I really like the walnut splines in it. I could do cherry as well, or babinga, any contrast. So what I'm going to do with this one, just as we did on the candle boxes, I'm going to miter the corners, glue it up, and cut the splines. I can't do that until I get the locks in, which we'll do. Kind of my general rule of thumb is, even using a little trim router, if I can get in there to route out the mortise for the lock, I just go ahead and assemble it. But these I can't do that. So again, you got to remember what we're doing here. These are just using up pieces of wood and matching up and doing the best we can with what we got. Now this little guy, I'm going to dovetail, the walnut. He's not super fancy, but it's going to look pretty good when we're done. A lot of figure. And you can actually see where I was marking it, I kind of changed my mind on the thing. But that happens. But here's the issue. On this one, I'm going to see if I can hold this up where you can see it maybe. But the first thing you notice, this is my tail jig, and I've got it mounted so I can deal with a smaller piece of wood. My issue is I can't really get a decent 1/2 pin. It's just, can we see that at all? When I line this up, I'm just going to get a little teeny nick, basically just a good sized nick in it. I'm not going to get a decent 1/2 pin. So just as I would do on that one, I'm going to treat it differently. What I'm going to do, I keep moving my clamps. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up for a nice 1/2 pin. The point of what I want you to get out of this is you got to think a little bit outside the box. Now again, if I had a variable or an adjustable pin, I wouldn't have an issue. But I got a problem. Actually, I do have one. I just ain't real sure where it's at. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the 1/2 pin only. Now you're going to see some CA glue on that side. Had a little bit of bark inclusion in that. That's that one we was looking at. Had a little bit of bark inclusion in there. So I fixed it. It really didn't come through to the outside at all, but I just wanted to make sure it was good and solid. Now I think you're going to go ahead and get the gist of this. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other end and we'll be right back. Okay, now that I've done that, I can set up between and run the metal. Now the difference here is what this is going to require me to do when I get to cutting the pins is I'm going to have to do just like we did. I'm going to have to take that knife, lay it out, cut one pin on the end, cut the other pin, then move to the center and finish it out. That's what I'm wanting you to get, is to think a little bit outside of the box on something like this. You remember back when we did the, I think we were doing the little knife caddies, and we were doing the angled dovetails. I gotta move it a little bit. I'm gonna mark it just so I can look at my line and tell how much I need to move. Yep, I can see it. That didn't work, did it? All right, that was a little better. This pencil. Get another one. Still just a hair. There we go. We got it. All right, I'll do the others in a minute because we're just about out of time. Camera girl's giving me that one of them things, you know. And that means shut up and hurry up, or shut up and get done. But I'm gonna lay this out because I want to do that in because I want you to see it. Okay, here's what I've done. I laid it out just like we did, and you can see I've got my pin right on my line for my first half pin. Got that? Yeah. There we go. I know we've been over all this before, but I'm getting a lot of emails, so we'll make sure everybody's got it. I'm gonna make one cut. I'm a little high on that. Then I'm simply going to go to the other side and do the exact same thing. One of the biggest keys is using the knife. Now I'm going to come back to my center. The only thing I got to be careful here is that I don't go all the way over and take part of my half pin out. When you understand that in reality, all you're doing is pattern cutting, that's it. It's no different than making a plywood template and using it with a router bit to make a pattern. There's just no difference. The only difference is that, you know, you're cutting pins. A little bit right, yeah. And I'm there. Got a little gap right here. That was my fault. But, well, I say it was. Because how do you handle something like that? Is that little teeny gap right there? I'm getting fussed at. Stop moving it. That's joking. All I would do with that would be go to my table saw, cut just a little thin piece of veneer. When I glue it together, I'm going to put it in there, glue it in, sand it, gone. End of story. Yeah. I wanted you to see that because I wanted to explain it to you. But if you take your time, you can get really nice dovetails doing it. The last thing I want to mention, one of the things that I always do is I always turn around and take these and wait a minute. Yeah. One of the things I always do, especially when I'm doing the softwood, when I'm doing crotch, where I know that chip out is a little bit somewhere is going to be inevitable, is even though I'm cutting 3/4, what I'm going to do, if you look right here, this pin is actually below the surface, although we allowed for it. And the reason for that is this is going to allow me to go in and put them back through the sander, the drum sander, and take them down a little bit. That's going to remove pretty much any chip out outside that I've got. So again, leave your wood a little thick, work it like it's 3/4, then sand everything down, and you're going to get a lot cleaner, especially when you get into something where you got all this gnarly crotch. Now the other reason I went over this is that our next project, we don't have to go through all this again. I hope you got this, okay? Next show, we do the feet, the molding, wrap them up. Boxes are done. I'll see you then.
He gets off on country music, cause disco left him cold. And he's got young friends and a new wave, but he's just too friggin' old. And he dreams at night of Woodstock and the day John Lennon died. How the music made him happy and the silence made him cry. Yeah, he thinks of John sometimes, and he has to wonder why. 'Cause he's an old hippie and he don't know what to do. Should he hang on to the old? Should he grab on to the new? He's an old hippie, this new life is just a bust. He ain't trying to change nobody, he's just trying real hard to adjust. He was sure